I began to recognize that money was only a part of the puzzle. Do wealthy people have long-term care? Success. Perfect design. Is it possible? And the theme is to properly transform our minds and lives, we must pay close attention to the ideas, traditions, and values we hold dear. What happens when you have good parents and a child goes awry? It's more than money. Money is a venue, money is a conduit, but money cannot shift your experience into something that is powerful and meaningful. And welcome to today's segment of The Power of Money. I'm your host, Michelle Graves, affectionately known over the last 30 years as the Money Lady. And for those of you who've been my faithful viewers over the years, you know that my commitment is to bring you only the very best in the arenas of finance, in the arenas of lifestyle, in the arenas of psychology, and increasingly and more so in the arena of law as it relates to seniors and elder care issues. And so it is, of course, my extreme delight, pleasure, honor to have back as my guest. It's been a bit. Craig Matthews, who is an attorney at law, who specializes in fraud, for senior fraud and other things. Give me a little bit of background about what you do.
Well, Michelle, first I want to thank you for giving me now the opportunity to meet with you.
My pleasure.
And we go way back, and
Yeah,
I
I
appreciate this. I've been practicing law now since 1978.
Goodness gracious.
A civil litigation attorney, so I do a lot of jury trial work and litigation work. And many years ago, I became involved in cases that involve an elderly person who was financially exploited. And I've seen over the years an explosion of problems in that area, and more of my work is in that area, and it's also a passion of mine. I became a lawyer to help people, and people in need, people that are being taken advantage of, and this was quite an area here because it's rampant, it's epidemic.
Oh, God.
And this is what
yes,
it
is.
I also have a personal background. My dad, many years ago, rest his soul, he suffered from Alzheimer's. So my family went through that experience, and I learned about it firsthand. So I'm trying to do what I can with an understanding of the very great difficulties that dementia and Alzheimer's, things of that nature, present to families, and trying to help them out.
That is absolutely honorable. That's all I can say.
Well, thank you.
No, it's honorable because with the graying of America, the demographic shift, 10,000 baby boomers, our generation, leaving the workplace and, quote, retiring, and many of them finding out they can't exactly retire because they've got to deal with parents. And the fact that their parents are living longer, and the fastest growing group out here today are centenarians, people over 100 years old.
Amazing.
And then I just read a statistic that the fastest growing group in that group are orphan seniors, which is seniors who've outlived everybody.
Yes, amazing.
And they don't have anybody but a distant cousin or church people. And these are all new things that we never anticipated.
And sometimes unfortunately, they're living longer. We're living longer, but not necessarily living longer in a healthy manner.
Okay.
Such that many of these older people are incapacitated. They're stricken with physical problems. They can't get around. They're bedridden. They're sick. They have heart disease, diabetes. They have health problems, but they're living longer. And some of those people that are living longer also have dementia-related issues, and they're finding that there's a correlation between, diabetes and heart conditions and Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yes.
So the need is very great. So you have a lot of older people that don't necessarily have the ability, either physically or mentally, to handle their life, to handle the ongoing the needs, paying bills and getting things done.
Getting through life.
Correct.
Daily.
Correct. And some of these people have amassed, assets, acquired assets during their life, and now they're in a place where they can't manage it anymore.
So what happens?
Well,
give me a typical scenario.
Well, you've got you've got the good cases and then the not so good cases.
Well,
unfortunately, as a lawyer, I see
the not so good cases.
Yeah, once in a while.
Well, paint me the good case. Well, I'll paint a picture. The good case would be Dad and Mom have gotten older. They're now elderly. They're crossed over 80. So they're not considered seniors, but they're now considered elderly. Their home is paid off. They get pensions because they come from the era where you got pensions.
Yeah.
They've
back
been in the day with General Motors and Jeep and everybody paid pensions. So they're getting a comfortable pension check. They've educated their kids. They've got grandkids, even great-grandkids. They've also purchased, while they were in their earning years, they purchased a good, solid long-term care product through an insurance carrier that would pay them money if they needed help in activities of daily living. That's cooking, eating, bathing, those kinds of things. So they actually, no matter what comes down the pike, they have a future that looks pretty workable.
That's that's a good backup plan.
Yeah, workable. I didn't say ideal because when you're sick,
nothing's ideal.
Nothing's ideal. Nothing. So I just painted, for you, my audience, I just painted a Goldilocks story without the bears.
I would say that is a Goldilocks story.
Without the bears.
Unfortunately, there's bears out there.
They're bears. They're bears. So give me your scenario.
Well, the bears are commonplace, and the bears, people don't have long-term care plans in place. And they don't, in fact, have a real plan for what are we going to do. We're living longer. If we become sick or ill, who's going to take care of us? If I can no longer drive to the grocery store and buy my groceries and drive around and live my life independently like I've been doing for 60,
ages,
70 years, what's going to happen here? Most people just don't think about that and don't plan for it. If they do think about it, they just don't know what to do because it's an overwhelming issue.
I can only imagine.
Who wants to think about
Jeez.
It's difficult. Who wants to think about those kind of huge challenges? It becomes overwhelming, and I think a lot of people, something is overwhelming, let's put it under the rug. We don't have to talk about that.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that happens frequently. And then something does happen, then there is a problem. They can't drive to the grocery store anymore. There's an infirmity that occurs or an injury or any number of things. Now they become dependent and they don't have a plan in place. What are they going to do? Unfortunately, one of the bears is often comes in the form of a predator that sees a situation that can be exploited.
Okay.
Sees this is prey in a sense. And
or opportunity.
An opportunity, yes.
Opportunity.
A golden opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Mom and Dad or Grandpa and Grandma have amassed a good fortune, live in a nice house, and they're comfortable, and some people see that as an opportunity to take advantage, unfortunately. And if you don't have plans in place, that exploitation is very easy. It's like taking candy from a baby. If the elderly person has lost their ability to fully understand their situation. You know, we live in a complex world. I mean,
yes, we do live in a complex world.
It's amazing, right?
And technology and everything else. I mean,
look in our life. Look
I
how
mean,
amazing.
I really
Amazing.
do mean it. When television went off the air at 1 in the morning and the lines,
Sure, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and today it's like 24/7,
Yeah.
everything.
It's a brave new world.
It is a brave new
And
world.
it's difficult. It's difficult. You know, I'm 65. Difficult for me
Yeah,
to keep up
yeah.
with all the
Well, I
technologies that are
told you
available.
I'm 66, and at the point my grandson downloads, he's 4, he just turned 4, he downloads the Netflix app onto my iPhone and proceeds to key in some stuff, and he starts watching a movie.
You almost have to have a grandson or granddaughter or some young person to keep us up to speed.
Yeah,
It seems
yeah,
that
it
way.
just seems that way. It really does.
So this is an overwhelming world. So now we're looking at people that are older. And unfortunately, some of the issues that I deal with, they can start before the 80s.
Really?
Oh, sure, yeah. Someone can start losing a judgment and ability to really keep on top of things. That can happen. Mini strokes. It can happen in the late 60s or 70s. It's not just problems with the 80s.
Okay.
But the point, though, is that, you know, we go through life using our intelligence and the information we've gathered to make the right decisions and to be on the lookout and be wary for not getting ourselves in problem. We know where not to drive. We know, you know, things not to do. But with dementia, when that hits, and it's hitting a lot of people, and it can hit
It's epidemic, Greg.
Correct.
I'm so serious.
Yes,
it's
correct.
officially epidemic.
Correct. It's millions of people.
Millions.
And it comes on very subtly and very slowly. And sometimes it's only the closest people that really know what is going on here. But the person that is affected by the dementia doesn't necessarily, the irony is, the rub is that part of that dementia affects the ability of the individual to recognize that they have a problem.
Well, they don't know that they have dementia.
Correct.
Because of the nature of that brain disorder.
Correct.
And viewers do understand that Alzheimer is a brain disorder for which there is no cure. It is progressive, and the end is death.
And I would recommend to your viewers and to you, there's an excellent documentary on the last tour of Glenn Campbell.
I saw that on PBS.
Wasn't that amazing?
Oh, I started crying.
Yes.
I started crying when he was on the stage.
Correct.
And he couldn't remember the words.
Correct.
And the family, the fans, we were all like, we'll sing it for you.
Right.
You don't have to sing it. It was hard. That was a hard movie.
It was a difficult movie, but a very
accurate,
real,
very real.
So you have kind of two realities. You had his fans and the people that he's seeing on a superficial level.
Right.
Then you have his
family,
his daughter, his wonderful daughter.
Wasn't she amazing?
She was an angel, and his wife.
She was amazing.
Amazing. He had angels with him.
PBS. You all Google Glenn Campbell PBS documentary. I'm sure you'll pull it up on YouTube or something, but I would encourage everyone, if you did not watch that documentary on Glenn Campbell, who is now gone, and what he went through with Alzheimer and his family, and this is a very wealthy man, to see that, it's empowering.
And it's also available on like Netflix.
Yeah,
You
I'm
can
sure
rent
it's
it as a
available on
DVD.
Net. Yeah, I'm sure
I recommend it
I
for
do
people.
too.
Beautiful story.
Funny you
A
brought
human
that up.
story. And that-
I literally
yeah.
was crying.
Yes,
Watching
correct.
my television.
Yes.
I looked at this man who is such an honorable man.
Yes, a loving person.
A
Yes,
loving
yes.
personality.
You
You
could
could tell. And to see what happens even in the best of circumstances when
Correct.
things are out of hand.
Correct, correct. You can see how he lost his ability to really, he can still make jokes
But it was
and he could
just-
keep people that were on a superficial level, keep them entertained.
Right.
But then you saw when the doors were closed, he was in his
Ooh-wee.
hotel room, he was,
He was something else.
yes, yeah, it was sad.
It was very sad.
So this is what happens. And it's very easy for someone that is not an honorable person. And you know, I believe, I've always been a very optimistic person. I believe that most people are good people. They want to do the right thing. But there's a small percentage in our society, probably all across the world, I'm sure
Yep,
it's not
I'm
just
sure.
America, that aren't. For whatever reason. They got dropped as a baby.
On the head.
I don't
Very
know what
important. Your mother
happened.
dropped him on the head. Okay, something happened.
But they're not right.
Right.
They seek to take advantage, they seek to exploit. And if they see a situation where someone can be exploited, they will. And that's the problem. That's the problem. And this is what I see. So I see families coming who have, their loved one has been taken advantage of. And they're coming, well, what can we do about it?
How do they know, how do they discover this is occurring?
Well, there's basically two categories, I'd say there, and you deal with the issue very differently. Some families don't discover until after death.
Oh my goodness!
And then, you know, there's no estate open. Well, you know, then the daughter, well, what happened to dad or mom? You know, dad left mom a lot of money, and what happened to her estate? And then someone will pop up that had been caring for them. Oh, that's all gone.
Matter of factly.
Correct. What happened? So that's one situation.
Okay.
The other situation, that has to be dealt with differently. The other situation is where, typically, I'll give you just a typical case where, you know, one of the children becomes aware that there's been the possibility, their antenna come up. Someone has been hanging around mom, or someone's been hanging around dad, and some unusual things are happening. You know, all of a sudden, dad, who's 85, so a nephew is starting to spend a lot of time with dad. Maybe even moves in. Oh, dad needed, mom was gone, and dad was lonely, and need some help, so I moved in to help, and next thing
that sounds good on face value.
It does sound good,
I mean, they do get lonely.
But then you've got the dad who's 85 years old and really doesn't drive anymore. All of a sudden, he buys a new car. A Jeep Grand Cherokee, top end, or whatever.
Parked in the car in the driveway.
Yeah, and of course, the nephew is the one that's driving the car.
Yes, of course.
And the nephew never had really a good job or so, and never had the opportunity to own a car like that.
Now he's got a car.
He's living the life, and he's buying some new clothes, and next thing you know, maybe he's taking a trip. Signs like this, where is this money coming from? Well,
he's got an inside bank.
Correct.
He doesn't have to go to a bank. Correct. He's got a bank.
Correct.
Yes.
That's a common case. A lot of times it is a family member, I would have to say.
That's doing this.
That is doing it.
Well, it seemed to me that's back to opportunity, because as people, and again, viewers, listen to what I'm saying. As people age, family and relationships take on greater import and meaning. Most elderly people are very sensitive about their family and their children and about maintaining connectivity. I will tell you that now. So they'll put up with stuff that a younger person would not put up with. for the sake of the family. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
I know
Absolutely.
they're sensitive about family.
Correct. Correct. And they don't want to create waves.
I'm so, oh my goodness. Craig.
So the daughter, the responsible daughter, Dad, why did you buy a Jeep Grand Cherokee? These are expensive. Dad, you don't even drive anymore. Well, you that's my business.
That's exactly what they're going to say.
That's none of your business.
None of your business.
Since when are you questioning my financial decisions?
And my money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You keep out of this.
Okay.
That's the problem. That's the problem. And it's not always family. Sometimes it's. I had one case that made some news, where it was a bank manager.
Oh, I remember that.
Do you remember that case?
The bank is a Cincinnati, Ohio bank.
Correct.
And they quashed the news in the Cincinnati Enquirer, but the Dayton Daily News
came through.
And published the whole thing about that carnage with that bank.
Right. That was a bank manager, but a daughter, the antenna went up. Why is the bank manager in your living room, Mom?
Exactly.
And what does Mom say? You mind your own business. She is my friend.
Oh my God.
You keep out of this. Okay, Mom. I mean, these are your parents. And you're obviously going to be a kid.
Right,
Here,
always.
Here I was a lawyer, but when my parents were alive, I'm advising them, but I was always just the kid.
Yeah. What the heck do you know about
who
life?
are you challenging who my friends are?
Right. You're like,
But the antennas go up, and then what do you do about it? Just a problem.
Yeah.
So the daughter in that case, and other cases, someone sees what's going on to their loved one, and it just doesn't seem right, and then
doesn't look right.
Yeah, something isn't right about this.
Well, if I can interject, I had a real case situation, so I know what you're talking about, where my great uncle, who was a bon vivant, lived in a very high-end part of Cincinnati, and he changed his POA and put his step-granddaughter on it. And she promptly refinanced the house.
Yeah, yes.
Stripped the equity out. She promptly got a car. She began to have a lifestyle while he's living like the Great Depression. And the only way we knew things were awry is that the sale of the house, the sheriff's sale, was in the paper. And somebody saw it and called and said, what's going on here? Isn't that your uncle? And I said, mea culpa, I don't know anything about this. Long story short, you would have thought I was trying to drag a cat out to take a walk. My great uncle was fighting all the way to the end. He would not prosecute. We had to, the bank was involved because she used the power of attorney.
Correct.
And he never prosecuted her.
If Jesse James knew about a power of attorney, he never would have robbed a bank.
He never would have robbed a bank.
Who needs to?
Who needs to rob a bank with a power of attorney?
A lot easier money available.
Folks, be careful about who you name as your power of attorney. I'm telling you, be careful.
Yeah, the power of attorney is a very,
it was a bear. The bank was like.
Correct. And you let them in.
Oh,
you give them the power of attorney, you have just opened
the
given
door.
them the key. Correct.
And I could not believe the fight. And the bank was gracious enough. They did not have to do what they did, but they were gracious enough to rescind the power of attorney and stay the sale of the house, although he couldn't play catch up because he didn't have the money. So we had to have time to sell it. Quick sale. Fortunately, it was in a Hyde Park, which is very high end in Cincinnati. Right. So he was able, but it did something to him. That whole process did something to him. And a couple of times I saw him looking at me kind of funny, like, I can't believe you're doing this. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm your niece.
I'm trying to help out.
I'm your niece. You're gonna be homeless, you know, and you don't. So it was very illuminating.
Right, and that's evidence of this dementia. That's what it
Yes,
does. They
yes.
lose the ability to have that discernment, that good judgment that they've
Right.
always had all their lives. This good judgment, sound
Right,
judgment of people,
right.
they lose that ability, and next thing you know, they're trusting someone they shouldn't be trusting. They don't know that they're trusting someone they shouldn't be trusting. And someone who's trying to help it, they see that as an
Interference
affront.
and
They
yes.
become defensive. They view that as, it's a very problematic situation, and it's devastating to the elderly person, to the victim, because no one wants to acknowledge that we've been exploited, we've been made a fool of, we've been taken advantage of. It's just not in our instinct. That's why.
So what is your, as legal counsel, so let's give a hypothetical. Sally comes to see her dad, and there's a lady friend that frequents Noun, and that's fine, that's his business, but she has observed some things happening that would suggest that this is a very expensive relationship. And she doesn't feel that her father is capable of doing some things he's doing. And so she happens to see some checks that would suggest that a lot of money is being spent. And she calls you. What would you do?
Well, the first thing I would do, of course, I'd want to meet with her, and I would try to encourage her. I would encourage her to see if she could try to have Dad come to that meeting.
Come to a meeting with you. Okay.
To explain the concerns, because without the cooperation of Dad, there's not much Sally can do. Because Sally's not on the accounts and such. She has seen in your hypothetical, she's seen some checks, seen some strange evidence. But if she calls Dad's bank, well, who are you? I'm his daughter.
The bank is
well,
definitely not
going
to.
You.
No.
Correct.
No,
they
you're
will
not on the account. Yeah.
And but if Dad can be persuaded to, will you at least give us an authorization, Dad, so that we can just take a look and make sure that everything is correct. In that situation with the bank, that's what the daughter. I first met with the daughter, then I told the daughter, will Mom come in here? The mom with the bank manager. And she came in, and very
the mom
nice.
came in.
The mom did come in, and she was.
Okay.
She had enough of her wits about her. She was funny and witty and making jokes. And when I relayed to Mom, your daughter's concerned about some unusual things have been happening with this bank manager, and this is none of my daughter's business. It's none of your business.
None
Mr.
of your.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, well, I understand, but
we just love you.
Yeah, we're trying to help here. Would you be willing to sign an authorization so that I could take a look at these accounts just to make sure that everything is
okay.
Correct? And she goes, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. You're not going to do it. You're not going to contact my friend. You're not going to. No, I'm just going to contact some of your financial institutions and just get a snapshot and make sure everything looks good. Okay, I'd be willing to do that. So she signed the authorizations, the release.
Okay.
And then with that authorizations, then you can contact the banks, get the bank statements, and we found, $400,000 missing. And that was the beginning
Somebody
of the
got
end.
a new house.
It was like more than $1 million was taken. So we got all that back, but that's how the process starts. If you can get the older person to at least sign an authorization to allow someone to check for them. Now, sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they can't come to my office because they're in a nursing home. And
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
people are stealing from them in a nursing home?
Oh, absolutely.
How in the heck do you do that?
My first elder fraud case, he was in a hospital. He was in one of the Dayton hospitals, and his nephew shows up with flowers.
Okay.
Oh, Uncle, I'm so sorry to hear you had this situation in the hospital. And he comes every day and brings, candies and such. And after several days, tells his uncle, gosh, Uncle, what are you doing about your mail? Oh, I don't know. Your mail's probably stuffed up. I'll bring it to you. Okay, thank you. So he starts
Bringing his mail.
Bringing the mail. Well, how are you going to pay these bills? Oh, I don't know.
I hadn't thought about that.
I hadn't thought about that. And the uncle is
Yeah.
sick, can't get out of bed and
Right.
such.
Perfect.
Let me
Let
help
me
you
help
out.
you.
Let me help you out. Next thing, he comes the next day or a few days later with a power of attorney.
Sign.
Sign here. That's the beginning of the end. By the time he was released from the hospital, his entire life savings was gone.
Oh, no. Stop.
This is true. This is true.
Stop.
Yeah, that was my first case.
His entire life
Life
savings
savings, correct.
was gone.
Correct. Correct. This
I
is the
can't
nephew.
even imagine how that man felt.
When he found out about it, he became very angry.
I'm
very angry.
sure.
Yeah, correct.
I'm sure
It was a
because he had
betrayal.
been betrayed
Correct. Yeah, by his nephew.
by
yeah.
his nephew.
So,
Ooh, I'm
but
getting
by
ready
the
to start
but by the
there
time
now.
I found about it, it was a caregiver actually who realized something is going wrong here, and he had somehow heard about me and persuaded the older gentleman to come and see me.
Ooh.
So I didn't know what to do. So there are remedies.
So may I ask, what was the outcome of that as your first case?
Well, the outcome of that, we took that case to a jury trial.
Okay.
And the jury verdict was to award all of that money back with attorney's fees and with punitive damages and back interest. The jury was angry.
Yeah, well,
Of course they're angry.
that's
course they're
something to be.
Yes.
So did the young man have to do? Was it considered a criminal act? Is this considered a criminal act?
I find with that, I practice in the civil area.
Right, I know you do.
There's civil and then there's criminal.
Right.
And I don't practice in the criminal area. A lot of times the same act is both a violation of civil laws and a violation of criminal laws.
Okay.
However, I find that law enforcement, they're not geared up to handle these kind of cases.
Okay. Okay.
They're, it's just different. They just view it as a family matter, family dispute or so. So it's very rare for criminal people, law enforcement, to get involved. In all the years I've been doing this, that first case was back in the 80s. In all the years I've been doing this, there's only 2 cases where I have been able to persuade law enforcement to get involved. The bank manager, she ended up in the federal penitentiary.
Oh, she should have.
Yeah, she
$1
should
million.
have. The FBI on that.
You're out of here. A federal bank, you're gone.
But that's the exception, though. So
only
many
because,
families. Yeah, the police. It's very different than a television is stolen or drugs are being found growing in the backyard. Marijuana. These are matters that involve, maybe you could call it a white-collar crime, and there's not.
So
a lot of
even
work
if
to work
a
that out.
stranger, not a stranger, but say
A nephew.
well, let's take away the family connection. Say a member of his church, because seniors go to church. That is a group that does go to church, comes to visit, offers to help, and does the same thing. Would the response have been different, meaning would the law enforcement view this maybe as a fraudulent act?
Here's what happens, I find. If the police would even make the first call.
Okay.
So they call the church friend who is getting all this money. And the person says, he loves me. I'm taking care. I bring meals and he has this affection for me, and that's why he's giving me all this money, and there's no crime at all. This is these family members, they're just trying to get his money, and they don't like that he's...
That I'm getting it first.
Correct. They don't like that. As they see, it's a family dispute. So
and they still see it as a family.
Correct.
That's interesting information, because as this field of elder fraud continues to grow, and it's going to grow because it's just too much money on the table. I mean, senior citizens, if they've done well, they have wealth, they have assets. And there are greedy people out here. You don't like to think about it, But there are greedy people out here, and many of them are their family members. If a person does not have a recourse to punish them, then what is the punishment? Repayment of what they stole?
Essentially, yeah.
That's the
Get the
punishment,
money
restitution.
back. Get the money back.
Okay, get
Yeah.
the money back.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so they're free to go on about their lives. Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct. For the most part.
Anything on their records? If we pull up their social, will anything?
Well, the lawsuit might, the lawsuit would be
Yeah,
on there, and if there's a judgment against them, that would
Yeah.
be bad for their credit.
Yeah.
But they can move on.
Oh, that just.
You remember some years ago we had a gentleman from the AG's office, the Attorney General
Yes.
office here in the fraud division, and I remember him talking about how many calls that they get in this area, but that fraud department in Columbus is very small. So you just have a small number of people handling thousands of calls from her. They just do not have the resources to deal
to
with.
proceed
That's
proactively.
the problem. And the FBI too. You know, the agent is an excellent agent. I have greatest respect for the FBI, greatest respect. But he said because of our resource limitations, unless there's a pattern, and unless there's enough funds involved, it can't stay on our radar. We can't investigate every case. We have to see, 3, 4, 5, 6 victims before
From the
we
same
can.
person.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
So it's going to happen. They're going to get away with it. They're out there. They're not in jail. And even if they are in jail, they're going to be out after this. This bank manager was sentenced, I think, 6 or 8 years.
6 or 8 years.
So she's going to be getting out. So they're out there. So we have to be aware that there are criminal type people that are out there taking advantage. Some
And
of them
many
are.
of them are your family
Some
members.
of them.
Gee,
Correct.
honey.
Correct. Correct.
That's tough, Craig.
Yeah, it is very tough, very challenging.
That's because I'm a family person, and I don't even know how. I just don't know how I would handle that. I really don't, because I do believe that you don't have the right to steal from people. You just don't. This is America. Go and make your world. But you don't have the right to take from the elderly. You don't have the right to take money, period, but especially when a person has made it past 70 in this country and they're still alive. I mean, that's amazing.
Correct. Congratulations. Yeah.
Congratulations. You're still alive. And to see that happen and to know that there's really nothing that can be done other than restitution.
Correct.
Restoration of the mind, I don't know. I think that person that was taken is going to be, they're going to have some issues.
I find that if the victim had dementia, and that's usually the case, I find.
Okay.
Usually it's the case. There's some dementia issues going on. And dementia is a progressive, long-term disease. And it starts in very subtle ways.
Oh, but it starts.
But it progresses. And in an event like this, a traumatic event where someone who was trusted, now the old person realizes they were fooled. They were made a fool of. It's emotionally, mentally, psychically devastating to them.
I would have to believe it.
So their decline, dementia decline, it just drops down. Correct. Yeah, it's sad. It's very sad.
I would definitely have to believe that is the case, because the very thing that they hold near and dear is now
has been betrayed.
It's been betrayed,
Right.
and they don't really have a way to process that, because their brain is not on right frequency anyway, and then you have that going on.
It's a blow.
That's a
major blow.
hard blow.
So they need support, and usually the family member that comes to me for help. That's why they're coming. They're saying, Mr. Matthews, I'm not coming to you because I want this money. No, I want my dad to have this money because he's getting older. He could get sick. He needs these
needs the
funds
money.
so he can be properly cared for.
Right.
that's why I'm doing this. So what we can do is recover, at least get those funds back.
Right, that's
And
major.
then, yeah, and then at least you know, Dad can have the money that he should have, his own money, gets his own money back, and then he can fund, you know, moving to a, you know, a care facility with a memory unit, that type of thing, and have some choice in the matter.
And have some choice. And I'm just going to turn back to my audience again. Please be aware that when people have Alzheimer, which is a form of dementia, and it's a serious form of dementia, that at the point where you can no longer attend to them, and trust me, it's coming faster than you think, because you cannot take care of a Alzheimer person who's in their fourth stage and wandering and all of the things because the brain is deteriorating. To call around. If you don't believe me, call around and ask for a memory care unit for these different facilities. And you're looking at $8,000 to $12,000 a month. And I do mean it. And believe me, if you are going to have to go that route, you're going to have to deal with the possibility of how can we pay for it? That's first and foremost. Do they have the assets to continue to have them live there? And finally, if they run out of money, am I prepared for them to go on Medicaid, which is long-term care for poor people? And believe me, when they're finished, your parent or parents will be poor. They only can allow them to keep $2,000 and $50 a month for spending. There you go.
That's a sad reality.
Isn't that the
That's
sad
correct.
reality?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, Medicaid is so important. That's the final safety net. Otherwise, we're going to have senior citizens in America living on the streets as homeless people.
Without a
gonna
doubt.
happen,
Without a doubt, Craig.
So that's the safety net.
Yes, yes,
and then
it is.
They can get at least qualified for a Medicaid facility and a Medicaid bed. But, you know, a lot of times families, you know, want more than $50 a month.
Yes, they do.
To help take. I'd like, you know, Mom to have a nice pair of slippers or have some other
or
creature
room she doesn't
comforts.
have to share.
Correct, and come and bring her out and take her to lunch and such. And so we try to at least, if someone is the good fortune to have accumulated assets, try to at least get those assets back, preserve the assets, and then there can be some more choices.
I think that is so very important. Before we go any further, you have not given your phone number. This has been good, but I know that viewers are wondering, how do I reach this man? Can you please give a phone number or a contact venue?
Well, certainly. Craig Matthews, 937-434-9393. That's my office, and we're...
Can you say it again? Slower.
937-434-9393. And if we're open, my secretary will take your call and talk to you. If we're not, leave a voicemail and we will get back to you. I'm the old school. When someone calls, that call is returned within 24 hours.
I am so glad to know that, because sometimes you think you're in an abyss. I'm serious.
Seems so,
it just seems like, where am I here? You know?
That doesn't happen with me.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah, I'm happy to take calls and talk to people, or my staff is trained to help them through this maze, this difficult area.
No, so what is the most, I would say, what's the worst case you've ever dealt with? Not the bank, we know the bank situation was terrible, but aside from that, what was probably the worst case you've ever had to deal with in your lengthy practice?
Well, you know, there's so many difficult cases.
Oh,
it's hard for me to, it's so many.
Is it that
these are sad, yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, it's very sad.
I'm
so
just
many difficult cases. Well, like the first case I was talking about.
Yes.
Here is an old man, well into his 80s, and he comes up and he's saved up. He's retired. He has his life savings, and he comes out of the hospital and it's all gone.
That's
just
the end.
Yeah, it's very sad.
That is very, very
devastating.
sad.
Devastating to him. He was living in the independent he was in a retirement community.
Yes, right.
And
Assisted living.
At that time, he was assisted living.
Okay.
But you know, during the course of litigation, which took probably 2 years.
Okay, he had to leave.
Well, he had to. He went to the next level.
Okay.
Because he descended to that.
Oh my goodness.
Correct.
Oh my goodness.
It was sad. So sad to see that. These are difficult cases. So there's, you know, I have a box of Kleenex in my credenza, and oftentimes I bring that out. These family members, this is just devastating. Devastating to see that happen to someone.
And yet you say, when we were talking before broadcast, that you had gotten 4 calls. I'm not laughing in a merry way.
Last month. For you, you were asking me before the show how much this is coming up. And as an example, last month, we were contacted in 1 week by 4 families who had victim stories like this.
Situation.
Correct. 4
across all income specters.
Correct. That's correct. And they're, you know, I'm getting calls from all over the state, from, you know, Belleville County, Knox County, of course Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus, up in Cleveland. It's just going on all over. I get calls from really all over the country, but I can't. One person here, and I can only handle things in Ohio. But I help refer them, though. If someone's
okay, so
calling
you
me,
do at least have a referral network.
Yeah, I can find other attorneys that have knowledge and expertise.
Okay, because that's comforting, because this show airs in other states.
Okay.
So that's why I would
at least give them names.
Yes, so you can
because
at least.
Not all attorneys know how to handle these issues. Because
yes.
It's calling upon things that you didn't necessarily learn in law school, and it's not your everyday litigation, because you're dealing with clients that have diminished capacity. That's a curveball.
What does that mean when you say that?
That means that the attorney's client, if I'm representing the old man who was victimized, he's starting to lose judgment. So he's not necessarily making all of the best decisions that he can make. So I'm advising, I'm giving complicated legal advice, and judgment calls have to be made, and you can't necessarily rely on your client to fully understand. So that's why it's very important in these cases. I always will bring in a trusted, close family member that has their interest in heart, and it's a team approach, really.
Okay, so with the gentleman, for illustrative purposes, the gentleman that was in the hospital and his nephew took all of his money, how would you bring in would he identify another family member that could walk through this with him? In that situation there, he had never been married, so he had no children. Wow. So this was his closest relative. Closest relative was the nephew. The nephew. He had no one else. That was a very difficult case. No. But he had enough of his wits about him still that he was, when he found out what happened, he was angry, and the angels had sent this caretaker that wanted to help him out and brought him in. But that was a case where there really was his closest trusted person was his caretaker. The person that served him on a platter. And that's why my practice is so interesting, because usually that is, sometimes the caretaker can be the perpetrator. You have to be very careful. I'm not suggesting to the listeners that if they're a caretaker, you can trust them. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Right. So it's a case-by-case basis. Well, I'm just thinking about this rapid new category of seniors called orphans who have no family. Correct. And are living lives all over the country. Correct. In their own homes. And I'll give you a good case. There was a gentleman not far from my parents, and it was all on the news, but the house caught on fire and he burned up in it. And nobody, because the neighborhood is all seniors and everybody's asleep, he was an orphan. He had no wife. They did not see any family members. He came and went on his own, and he was a smoker, and they think that the cigarette caught the house on fire.
Yeah, in a wastebasket or
something. And all we know is that this man was in his 80s.
And just living independently.
And living independently,
well,
and had no connectivity.
I'm finding that sometimes, that's an interesting word, an elderly orphan. I'm finding in some cases there's family, but because of the demographics of modern America, the family is in distant parts of the country. So you've got someone living in Cincinnati, and their spouse has died, so they're living alone. And you've got a daughter in Anchorage, and a son in Brooklyn, and another son in La Jolla, in San Diego area. It's as if they're orphans because there's no one around.
So pragmatically, and I'm going to ask you if you could just, because our time is concluding, are there any legal steps that one can take protectively to avoid this type of an outcome?
Yes, I think, get in, talk to a lawyer, talk to an estate. Someone who knows estate planning, knows how to, you can prevent these kind of things. It can be done. But it takes planning. So if you've got an older parent, make sure they're seeing their lawyer. And accompany them if you can to the lawyer, and just make sure that they're being protected.
Okay. So viewers, if you have living parents, and I pray you do, and I pray that they're in good health. I do, because health is everything. If you don't have health, your wealth is shaky and everything else. But he's left us with a great takeaway, and that is to make sure your parents seek the advice of an estate planning attorney. That's a specialty, okay? That's not a general practitioner. And know what that's about, and be willing to go with them so that you can make sure that they understand what's being said, because many times seniors will nod in agreement, and it'll be like, whoo, over their head. So please consider that. Also, I'm going to ask for your phone number again, if you don't mind giving it to them before we close out one more time.
I'd be happy. It's Craig Matthews, 937-434-9393.
Awesome man. I'm honored to have him on the set again to talk about elder abuse, fraud, and to give us a perspective about what is happening right now. This is not coming. Years ago, when I was on a committee, this has got to be 25 years ago, we talked about this, about proper resources and whatnot, but it is officially epidemic. And please, please, observe your parents, observe your family members, observe the older ones in your family, and just know that it could happen to you. It could happen to anybody. Where there's greed involved and there's opportunity, here come the bears. This is Goldilocks signing off. No, I'm just kidding. It's been a delight to be a part of your world, and thank you so much for listening. I'm Michelle Graves, and look forward to you being a part of our next show. You take care, and as always, God bless you. Relationship is a common exchange. Is it possible using the divine order and plan of God? Yes, I said the G-O-D word. Why God? Well, you believe in something, and you might as well believe in Him. You are going to have your epiphany. You have to look at your character. You have to look at your reputation. You have to look at the influences in your life. You have to look at the moral power. Are you a power for good or a power for bad? Everyone wears sunglasses, and you said they don't determine what we see, but affect how we see things. We are in a time in history that I don't even know where things are going.